Welcome to our Becoming Your Best podcast listeners, wherever you may be in the world today. This is your host, Steve Schallenberger. We welcome you. We're honored to have you. And I am so looking forward to this guest that's coming to us from halfway around the world at least. Welcome, Nick Jonsson.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's great to be here with you and your listeners.
Oh, well, we've got a great show coming today. His journey epitomizes the triumph of the human spirit from the depths of adversity to the pinnacles of success. His story is one of resilience, redemption, and relentless pursuit of holistic well-being. In 2023, he was recognized as a LinkedIn top voice, as well as achieving a top 2% ranking in his age group in the Ironman triathlon. Boy, that's no piece of cake, Nick.
Well, thank you, Steve. It comes after some hard work, but also a lot of realizations in life of what matters to us.
Oh, that's true. His influence spans far beyond accolades. They're rooted in his profound mission to empower individuals to transcend limitations and embrace lives of fulfillment. He has a great background. We're going to talk about it. He's had a big impact in the world. And I'd like to jump right into this. So, Nick, please tell us about your background, including any turning points that's had a huge impact on your life and has helped you get to where you are today.
Yeah. So, Steve, I was born in Sweden. And then due to a motorcycle accident in my age 20, I couldn't continue to do my labor job. I was a construction painter back in Sweden and working. I didn't really think about university. I didn't think about studying, but that accident put me back into school. And I moved then to Australia to study at university. And that's where I then educated myself in communication, PR, marketing, advertising. And then I moved over to Southeast Asia, where I lived and worked now for the last 20 years, working my way up the career ladder, account executive, account manager, account director, general manager, managing director in sales and business development and so on. So I had a successful career going for me. But as we're going to explore today, something happened in my life that put a stop to all of that. And my life today is very different.
So as you look back on your life, Nick, what are some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of, things that give you the most satisfaction?
Yeah, and I love how you frame that, the things I'm most proud of and satisfaction, because I thought that I was doing well. I was getting the scholarships at school, topping the classes. I was getting the promotions, having the salary, the packages that I wanted, perhaps what looks on the outside as a perfect career. But that didn't fulfill me. It was only when I pulled the plug on this corporate rat race, elbowing my way around colleagues, and that I found myself. And I really had to take a deep look at myself. And this was not something that came easy to me. I had to hit actually what many are discussing or explaining as the rock bottom. I was basically falling into pieces, falling apart. And from that, then I'm most proud of this recovery journey. I'm 6 years now into repatching my life, and I'm constantly trying then to pass on this gift on recovery to others who are going through difficult times, physically, emotionally, and mentally.
Yeah, you're a huge advocate for mental healthness, mental health and physical well-being, emotional health, and you had a friend that really impacted your life that it sounds to me like really caused you to think about a lot of things. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so if we go back to 2018, that's when I hit my lowest point, but I was glad to get support. I was glad to get help by coaches, mentors. I went into a recovery program, and I really came through. I found the true purpose in my life, and I was living the best days of my life. But then in 2019, something happened that indeed changed my life forever again. And that was the loss of a friend, someone who had a good career going for himself. In fact, he just came back from Mount Everest. He climbed up to the base camp there, which was one of his dreams. And I remember following him on social media, seeing how happy he was. He also shared pictures of him and his girlfriend, really showing and saying that he's never been happier. So myself and many others were really, really puzzled when he suddenly was gone. What was it then? And I called up his brother and I asked him what happened. He also didn't know, but I asked him one more thing. May I talk about this? And he said, shout it out loud. Simon would have loved you to do that. And that then became my life mission, because I said, if I can only save or stop one life from going all the way to suicide, as long as I live, then that will be my mission. And that is the journey I'm still on today. That day, I did a few things. I signed up as a volunteer and a fundraiser for a suicide prevention agency. And I also made a YouTube and a LinkedIn video that went viral. And from there on, things have just moved in the right direction, where I keep trying to be of service and support people.
That's great. I love it, Nick. And Nick is really focused, and like many of us, as we have setbacks and challenges, we have to figure out how to deal with it, how to grapple with it, and deal with overcoming isolation and stress and anxiety and even depression. And things happen in life and you have to fight through it. And that has led to Nick writing one of his most important works called The Executive Loneliness, the 5 Pathways to Overcome These Kind of Things. So do you mind telling us about that a little bit, Nick?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure to share about that. So fast forward, then after I started to make those social media posts, it wasn't too long before TV was calling, radio was calling, newspapers, all the journalists, actually, in fact, from all around the world, including us talking today, contact me. We want to hear about this. Share with us what is going on. And I shared the stories. And after about a year, then the publisher contacted me and said, Nick, we need you to write a book on this. And it was not also something that was on my mind at the time. But I thought, well, if that's what the universe served me, then so shall be it. So I spent about 2 years, and this was during the pandemic, to interview senior executives, entrepreneurs, business owners, basically about isolation in the workplace, to really take a deep dive to identify the feelings they had. And inside this book then is about all the findings and the stories here. And there's quite a lot of remarkable findings, including that about 30% of the executives and business owners I interviewed for the book have acknowledged that they have feelings of isolation and they can feel lonely from time to time in the workplace. And this is spot on with the global numbers, like the Strategist numbers saying 30%, other organizations say 30 to 33%. So that's where we sit. So that's a really, really high number of people who actually suffer from the executive loneliness.
Well, things happen. I can tell you that my wife of 46 years passed away 3 years ago from early onset Alzheimer's. She passed away at 66. And sometimes we're cruising along in life and all of a sudden we're in a place we never dreamed we might be at. And I mean, that threw me into a tailspin. I mean, I kept trying to do the right things and, one foot in front of the other. But never did I dream when we were young and growing up and engaged, looking into each other's eyes, that one day she wouldn't know who I was. And so, you have to work through those things. And I'm sure you've kind of discovered that as you were going through your research. And so what can we do to get ahead of the curve on that? And I've got a couple of questions. Can you discuss, Nick, your efforts, first of all, to bring the conversation of mental health into the workplace, but it's just not there. It's in life generally. So how do you bring that up? Because things like I just described can happen and you got to move forward. And then what do you do about it? So maybe a couple of questions there.
Yeah. And first of all, Steve, I'm really sorry for your loss and sorry about your wife, what happened. And indeed, sadly, that is the life. It's the roller coaster of life, and it hits us when we least expect it. And I would say that I live a life now very different from 6 years ago. And should something hit me, and it does, because that's life, then hopefully I'm more prepared than last time. Because if we link it back to the conversation here, then if you have feelings of isolation, if you feel already that you are isolated in your workplace, then you probably haven't been proactive about your approach to do what I'm doing these days. I'm a big believer on having safe spaces. We need a professional network and a personal network where we've been completely honest, vulnerable, open, and being proactive about this in the good times, so that we are ready for the bad times. And if I mentioned then about the personal safe spaces, I'm now belong to a recovery group, one of the 12-step programs, because I had some alcohol issues, and I was honest about that. I owned up to it. So should it happen again, and I touch wood, I've not had a drink for soon 6 years. If this happens again, I now belong to a network. I have people I can call. I know people who would support me in that space. So that's on that side. But then I also belong to a men's group now, where we every week for 1 hour, we discuss, and we are open, we are vulnerable. We discuss what are the pain points, and we have a different theme every week. This week, it's shame and guilt, and we will all share on that. By doing that, we're building a stronger bond. We're practicing our vulnerability muscle. And if someone is there, we look out for each other. So when things go wrong in my life, then I have this ongoing weekly call. I will go on the call and I will share about it. I will not sit inside my office or sit at home to isolate on it and go into self-pity and dwell. So that's what my work I do now on the personal side. On the work side, I just want to say also that for many of us, it's difficult to be completely transparent and open and vulnerable. And I don't recommend everyone to go in and blast your news to everyone in the office, but you can choose your safe people in your office, perhaps your HR, perhaps if you feel comfortable with the boss, or one or two colleagues, perhaps at your level, who you can go and have these conversations and build up some trust with them. But apart from this, professionally, I believe we all should have mentors, coaches, belong to mastermind groups, peer groups, association clubs, and there you build your pockets of safe spaces with the people where you can trust. So when something happens, you are completely surrounded by people who will be there for you.
What have you found, Nick, is the best way to create that safe space, those pockets of people?
It's indeed about being proactive, reach out and link them to your hobby. So I'm a cyclist, a runner, and a swimmer. So I belong to swim academies. I have cycling clubs, running clubs, and there I find my friends there, and some of them, and we meet off the training. So we have conversations, we build our friendship, and I start to be vulnerable. I take the leadership here by opening up a little bit more first, and then naturally asking, how are you doing? And when you've been vulnerable first, it's quite human for the other person to start to open up. But if you're just sitting back and you don't open up, then the other person naturally won't either.
Oh, that's a big takeaway already from our discussion today is don't isolate yourself. When you have these challenges or setbacks that maybe sometimes you didn't even see coming, maybe reach out, right? Is that what you're saying, Nick? Is don't get isolated. Get out there and because there's other people that share this and that can empathize. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. Or even more so, be proactive to build these connections in the good times and have them as recurring, and have them in your calendar with some people that you have your weekly coffee or a monthly gathering. And when you discuss everything in life, and sometimes you might just discuss and share some tips about exercise or sleep or nutrition, because there's nothing serious going on. But when the next month come around and you have your catch up, then there's some real issues there, and naturally you will talk about it. But if something emergency is happening, you have then your safe spaces, you have your trust, pick up the phone and call. Indeed, don't isolate on it.
Excellent. All right, that's great, because when those times come, you have a place to go, and there's an anchor of security, it seems like, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, Nick, what have you found that you can do, your personal experience anyhow, of how to use leadership, self-discipline, goal setting in a way that it contributes to achieving optimal wellness and mental health? What's your experience on that?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan and lover of goal setting. I've been following Brian Tracy many years, including having hosted him over in Vietnam a couple of years ago and having him talking about goals to my team and my clients. And therefore, I've been setting goals for both my personal life and my professional life. And I believe we have to start with ourselves. It's about self-leadership, looking after ourselves so we show up at our best. And I set goals, and I work with coaches on that. I have a sports fitness athlete coaches who help me set the goals, and then I sign up for a race 1 year in the future. I set a target and goals to achieve something, and that keeps me focused during the year. And if I just look after myself in that way, then and because the health is the wealth here, so that's what it's all about, getting that right first.
I just want to mention, Nick and I had the chance. He lives, this call is taking place from, he's calling from Singapore. So he's a long ways away. But these principles are universal that you're talking about. And part of my early research, Nick, was I interviewed over 175 CEOs around the world. Initially did 150, but it's expanded well beyond that. And what I was looking for is what set apart high-performing individuals and high-performing teams from everybody else. And what we discovered is none of these leaders were perfect, but we saw over and over 12 things that they did that created the excellence. And that's what we put in our book, Becoming Your Best, the 12 Principles of Highly Successful Leaders. Well, the things that you're talking about are among the 12, and the things you're doing are what create the excellence. So I'm so grateful that you talked about that, like having a vision and having a sense of what you're capable of doing that's meaningful, and then what's your plan to get there, your goal setting. Those are two of the 12 principles, and I love the fact you're talking about them and describing the impact. What's the impact been on you of setting goals, Nick?
Well, it means that I'm achieving what my purpose is and what really the values and what's important to me. But it's very important that the goals align with your purpose, because sometimes perhaps we get goals on our desk that is not our goals. Perhaps it's company goals or the societies or parents or others who put these obligations on that. It's very important we separate that from the goals that is really linked to who we are as a person, and that those are the goals we should strive to hit, because I didn't always do that, and I was too selfish when I was at university. In my early years in the career, it was all about me. I was elbowing my colleagues up, wanting the promotions, impressing the bosses was more important than the well-being of my colleagues. But that led me to isolation. That led me to my downfall, and that led me to my crash. So these days I know better, and it's about being a good human being and being of service and being there for others. So having that mindset, I really feel that I'm aligning the goals better, and therefore when I achieve them, it's much more meaningful, because then it's not my goal achieved, it's impacting more people. It's like you don't want to score a goal in an empty stadium, right?
Exactly. What are some things, tips that you might give of how to set some good goals?
Yeah, I think the principles first, then the first step is to really think about your purpose and values. And if that's not clear, then perhaps work with a coach who can help you to take a deep dive inside yourself and identify your values and so on. And when you have that, then I think, going back to my Brian Tracy, I think he has some excellent tips, books, and so on how to do goal setting. And it's just simple formulas in how to set them. I'm a big believer of the SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. It's simple. And then just keep them on a sheet and keep updating them. In fact, I have them on a Google Sheet. I review them a few times a week and adjust it and looking at it, because then they stay on top of your mind, and they are your breakthrough goals.
Excellent. That's good. Yeah, Brian's a wonderful person. He's an inspirational person. He's had a big impact in the world, and love him. And what I've realized, these 12 principles, we didn't discover them. They're already there. We're just finding ways to talk about them, and the result is absolutely predictable every time. If you do this, you're going to end up in a better place. You have a vision, values, you have goals. By having those tied to something that's emotional and meaningful to you, there's a predictable outcome. I love the fact you're talking about that. Thank you, Nick. All right. So can you discuss the importance of resilience and the strategies you recommend for reducing stress, building resilience, and then bouncing back from failure and rejection?
Yeah, I love the conversation about resilience, because I know it's also a bit of a trendy topic and it's out there, but I would like to simplify it a little bit, because it very much comes back to what we discussed before. It comes back to being resilient. To me means healthy and having your place and in order for yourself. It's about self-leadership first, and really being that stress tolerant, and for example being in a good shape, then your rest pulse and everything else is lower, so you can handle more pressure, more stress. But more importantly, I would like to include a word here, vulnerability and resilience, because if you as a leader, you know your weaknesses, you know where you're falling short, and you are transparent and open about this with your team members, then you allow them to plug in and fill in your gaps. And that's the kind of leader that I believe we need to be today, because there's so many changes. The world is moving so fast. And especially if we are leaders a little bit older, then we need to rely on the younger generation. We need to be open and honest that we don't have all the answers and that they know the technology better than us. So let them help us. Let us embrace us and support us, rather than trying to be closed and trying to have all the answers ourselves.
Well, you've accomplished a lot of things, Nick. You have an inspirational book. I love the topic and the type of things that you're talking about. You've also run an Ironman triathlon. So tell us about discipline. What is the best way to discipline yourself, and how do you maintain that discipline to achieve something like that? So for some people, it's just losing 10 pounds, right? I know for me, I've got to have discipline, but how do you do it? How do you maintain that discipline?
Yeah, so with the discipline, we can come back to the goals. So once you set your clear goals that inspires you, that's your roadmap. And then it's about looking ahead and making some commitments. So and making sure that you commit to it. And that means if your goal is an Ironman, if an Ironman is 1 year out, then you got to work backwards, develop an action plan with the right people, and set a realistic goal 1 year in the future. Sign up, pay up front for that race. And then you will have your coach to do an action plan, and you prepay that coach if you have the ability for the whole year. And then you stick it in the calendar already before 1 year in advance. And that's how I do it now. And in fact, my calendar is blocked for the rest of my life or for eternity. My training slots, my times every day, when I have my self time and my training time. And someone will have to argue pretty hard with me for me to give up that time. It could be time for swim, cycle, run, meditation, yoga, prayer, or something like that. I have a few hours for myself, self-care every day, and I try to block 3 hours. So we have 24 hours a day. So can we spend 3 hours to work on ourselves? Well, that's a question for everyone to answer. But I would say, me as an entrepreneur now and a business owner, when I'm in front of my desk, then I'm the manager, I'm the administrator, I'm running the business, I'm working in the business. When I'm exercising or walking, yoga, trekking, cycling, then I'm sort of the CEO. I have the strategic mindset. I'm really the business leader and working on my business. And so if you do something you love, so if I'm out for a run, cycling, I'm still working, but at a higher level.
Wonderful. Yeah, it impacts everything. Do you share your goals, Nick?
I do. I have my breakthrough goals, yes.
And who do you share them with?
I actually share them with my coach and mentor and so on, and a couple of close friends. I share them, yes. Okay,
good. Well, this is one of the things we've talked about is in Becoming Your Best as you work on this, is that you share your goals with 3 to 4 people. I was just wondering how you do it. Makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It holds you accountable. And I mean, I also put a purpose statement for myself. I have a life purpose statement for myself, which reads, empowering people to live beyond their wildest dreams with vulnerability and holistic happiness.
Wonderful. That's great. You know, there's another thing I discovered. I'm just wondering if you've experienced the same thing. As I've shared my annual goals year after year with a selected group of mentors or close friends or family even, what I discovered is it's, yes, accountability, because I'm not going to be flaky, you know, when I do my goals. But second, I found that it creates a very special bond with that person that I hadn't necessarily expected. And it's a lifelong bond. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, sharing your goals is quite a personal, private thing. So you're being vulnerable, you open up. And in fact, one of my colleagues asked me, I know you're talking about goal setting. Would you mind sharing your goals with me? And it was my pleasure to do so. And he said, you know, you really inspired me to write my goals. And I'm now helping others also to write their goals through coaching and so on. So indeed, and it's a positive bond. And then you feel like you shared it with someone. So as you say, it's the discipline kicks in. You better be accountable and get up there and do some good things.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking in this discussion, plus you're finding somebody in your safe place that if you have a challenge, there's somebody to talk with.
Yeah, absolutely. You're building those safe spaces, which we discussed.
Oh, this has been so fun. Well, Nick, I can't believe we're at the end of our interview today, but I don't want to leave it at this. You have so much experience. I love the wonderful perspective you have, the things that you're teaching others. What are some final tips that you might recommend to our listeners that might be of the greatest help to them to find happiness and wellness and sustainable productivity and success?
Yeah, I would like to share my final message is to take ownership for your side of the street in your life and the things you say and do, because we live in a world that is so fast. It's easy to send a message and an email, and maybe we say something that we don't mean because we are rushed. Then you have a chance every day at the end of the day to slow down and think through your day. Did you say something or send a message that wasn't quite right? Then you can, at the end of the day, make an amend. Perhaps say that didn't come out quite right. Sorry, I was rushing through my day. I didn't mean that. Do you have time for a call tomorrow? So just try to close every day by being neutral. Make sure that you haven't done anything that wasn't quite you, because then you're going to have a bad sleep and maybe wake up in the middle of the night feeling bad about something you said or did. So that is my final tip for today. So keep making amends, apologize, don't accuse other people, but take ownership for your side, and then you will feel much better.
Oh, wonderful. Wow, what a visit we've had today. I'm so grateful for the things that you shared, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, Steve.
You bet. How can people find out about what you're doing?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. It's Nick Jonsson, NickJonsson, and Singapore. Or they can go to Amazon and look up the book, Executive Loneliness. It's also there on Audible as well.
Wonderful. I'm so excited to get it. I can't wait. I'm going to order both because I love what I found is I can really blow through the books, right, by Audible, but then go back and study the parts I want to when I have the physical copy. So that's a way to motor through things. And well, we wish you all the best, Nick.
Thank you, Steve. All the best to you and your listeners as well.
Okay. Well, it's been a delight today, and we want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us. I assure you, I've got to tell you, the very fact that you're listening to this podcast means you're working on becoming your best. And you realize and believe your best is yet to be. So that's an inspiration. Thanks so much. This is Steve Schallenberger signing off, wishing you a great